There are several authentic reports in the Buddhist literature that some disciples of the Buddha got enlightened by committing suicide. But that does not mean committing suicide is an infallible means of enlightenment. However, one cannot deny the possibility and the probability of enlightenment by committing suicide, because enlightenment is the complete extinction of all desires for living. The desire for living is based on the desire for sensual enjoyments. That is why several theistic religions promise the followers that they can be born after their death in an eternal heaven, living eternally, enjoying all the sensuous pleasures. The Buddha, on the other hand, preached the futility of sensual enjoyments. In his very first sermon, called Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, delivered to 5 ascetics after his enlightenment, he started the sermon saying the futility of sensual enjoyments. He himself left the royal palace as a prince, realizing the ephemeral nature and the futility of sensual pleasures he enjoyed in the royal palace. We, as I mentioned, want to live longer to enjoy sensual pleasures, to enjoy life. On the path to enlightenment, one realizes through experience the supreme bliss in the mind when it is free from all desires for sensual enjoyments. That means extinction of desires for sensual enjoyment through 5 sensory organs of the body is the supreme bliss, the ultimate bliss that one can realize. Therefore, it is not impossible for one to commit suicide at the verge of enlightenment, seeing the futility of living and enjoying sensual pleasures. In the Dhammapada, there is a stanza in the Puppavagga, there is a 14th stanza which was commented in the commentary called Dhammapadakatha. That commentary referred to a disciple of the Buddha called Godika, who committed suicide by cutting his own neck, but got enlightened at the last breath, last moment. There is a report in the Tripitaka, the Buddhist canon. Reverend Vakkali, another disciple of Buddha at the time of the Buddha, got enlightened by cutting his own neck and committing suicide. There's another disciple called Channa. He too got enlightened by committing suicide by cutting his own neck. There is a story in the Theragatha told by Reverend Sappadasa that he got enlightened when he put the blade onto his neck to cut his own neck and commit suicide. There is a story reported by the lady Arahant, the lady enlightened one, called Siha Theri, that she got enlightened when she tried to commit suicide, tied a rope round her neck, and when she was about to tighten it, she got enlightened. There is also a report in the Buddhist literature that the closest disciple of the Buddha called Reverend Ananda, who knew by heart all the preachings of the Buddha, because he was a living computer with a living hard disk, and he was invited to the first council after the Buddha's passing away, and the qualification to be a member of the council was to be an enlightened one. On the night before the enlightened council, he was meditating very hard to get enlightened in different postures, walking and so on. By early morning, he was fully tired, and it was reported that he sat on the bed just to lie down and rest, without lying down on a pillow, before lying down on the pillow, and just as he was turning from the sitting posture, he got enlightened. There is a story, very famous story regarding the enlightened one called Angulimala. He had killed thousands and thousands of people, but he got enlightened by listening to the Buddha. There is a story in the commentary of Parajika Pali with regard to the Tatya Parajika, the third Parajika, that 500 persons who were hunters in a previous life, who enjoyed killing together animals for food and pleasure, became the disciple of the Buddha during the time of the Buddha. And Buddha, according to the story in the Tatya Parajika Pali, said that he wants to rest physically and mentally for 2 weeks to that is 1 fortnight, half a month, and nobody should enter except one who can give him food daily to his room. When he got out of the room after fortnight, he found lot of disciples are missing. These are the 500 persons I referred to earlier. Before retiring to the Buddha's chamber, he was emphasizing on the value of meditating on the defilement of the body. These monks got fed up with their own body and they want to commit suicide. And according to the report, they have committed suicide, cutting their own neck by themselves, or they have asked some other person to cut the neck, and ultimately there was another person who was in a robe, who was not really a monk, who was there to feed himself with the food left out of the donations or alms given to the monk. He was asked by some of these monks to kill them and take all their clothes and other things that is in their possession. And he killed several of them and went to the river to wash the weapon. And he was repenting that he had killed innocent, holy people. Then it is reported that a deity that belongs to the Mara in the Buddhist literature, he was the devil called Mara, and this deity, supernatural being, said, "Oh, this person who killed the monks called Migala Pindika. Oh, Migala Pindika, you have done very good deed, because of which they could get enlightened and kill more and more of them." And he went by killing, and it reported sometimes he killed one person a day, 2 person a day, 3, 4, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, etc. That is how the Buddha found the monks are missing. They want to commit suicide because they had got fed up with living, sensual enjoyments. And the commentary says it was the result of their own karma by being hunters and killing other animals for their living. All these stories show that committing suicide can lead to enlightenment because it happens with the ending of all desire for living. But normal beings commit suicide because of the extreme desire for living and sensual enjoyment. Because they are frustrated, they have ideals, they have great desires. When they can't fulfill their desire, they kill themselves, that is commit suicide, that is through hatred. Hating the frustration they had to undergo. But in this case, when you are on the path to enlightenment, you realize the bliss of the mind free from all desires in transcendental meditation. And they get fed up with the sensual pleasures because there is an inner bliss without the sensual pleasures. And they do not commit a crime by committing suicide, not a bad karma committing suicide, because after the first stage called Sotapanna, that is translated to English as stream beginning stage, one loses completely the idea of a self, I. There is no I thereafter. There is no belief in a soul thereafter. Things happen automatically, and after that stage, there is a saying that one can enlighten before having the eighth birth. Nate bhavang attamang adyanti, as mentioned in the Ratana Sutta. Things happen automatically. And when one reaches the last stage before the enlightenment, before Arahanthood, the last stage before the Arahanthood is called Anagami, meaning never returner. They are not reborn again in this human world, in this world, because they are fully dissatisfied with the state of affairs in the world. They don't want any more sensual pleasures in this world, and they have no desire for life. That is why to be reborn here, you must have a desire for living here. Therefore, once they are in a state close to enlightenment, there is a possibility and probability that they could commit suicide. The important information given by this story is that even when you are enlightened, you had to face the consequences of your bad karma in your previous lives. That is why 500 monks, as I mentioned earlier in the Parajika Pali, Satya Parajika story, they kill themselves or get themselves killed by others because they were hunters in the previous lives. Even the Buddha had to undergo the result of previous karma. He had a headache that you had never cure. He had a backache he had never cure. He said, this happened because of my... And he was undergoing self-mortification for nearly 7 years before enlightenment. He said, it's because of my previous karma. He couldn't get human food for 4 months when he was living in Viranja. He said, it is due to my previous karma. And in the Achantiya Sutta, the discourse, it is said, karma vipako achantiyo. You can't even think of, you can't understand how the karma happens. And other thing, enlightenment is the ending of all desires for sensual enjoyment. And on the path, the desire for sensual enjoyment get diminished from moment to moment, little by little. Toka tokam, kane kane, as mentioned in the Malavagga or Dhampada. Little by little from moment to moment. What are defilements? The desire for sensual enjoyment. All evil in our mind is based on our sensual desires. Sensual desires are based on the idea of a self. The idea of self gradually vanishes on the path to enlightenment in meditation when you realize there is no soul anywhere in our mind or in our body. Every event in our mind and in our body are ephemeral. Every incident has a beginning and end. There is the impermanency. The body is dynamic, the mind is dynamic. That is impermanency. And because of impermanency, there is a transformation of the mind and the body. And neither the mind nor the body can retain a permanent identity. Therefore, one realizes there is no permanent self in the mind or in the body. And with that idea, they become fed up with sensual enjoyment because all sensual enjoyments are ephemeral and ultimately all sensual pleasures lead to sorrow and suffering. That is what is meant by the word Tannaya Jayati Soko, Ratya Jayati Soko, Buddha's words. Piyato Jayati Soko, all pleasures lead to suffering. When there is a self-realization of this truth, there is a possibility that you get fed up with life, living and sensual pleasures. In Pali, that state of mind is called Nibbida Jnana. Because of your experience in meditation, that desirelessness is the supreme bliss. In fact, nirvana is called desirelessness, tannakkaya in Pali. Ending of desire leads to enlightenment. Ending of desire means ending of desire for sensual pleasures. That end, that extinction come with the self-realization of the reality of life. Once you realize, you end the life. In fact, enlightenment means ending our living in the samsara, in the existence. We have been living in innumerable lives in the past, according to the Buddha's teaching. And enlightened ones are never reborn. Naijatu gabbaseyam punureti, as said in the Karaniya Sutra. Ending of life. Enlightenment means it is also a way of committing suicide. Ending of the stream of life. Therefore, enlightenment itself is committing suicide. Therefore, physically committing suicide is not an impossibility at the enlightenment. And several stories, as I mentioned, authentic stories, reports that several disciples of the Buddha killed themselves, committed suicide and got enlightened. And that is not an impossibility.